Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see a reasonably big audience, and on this somewhat old acorn or penny of a discussion point, when I was doing just a little bit of research, I noticed that there's been arguments for and against grades going back nearly 100 years, and recommendations as to how we could do without them or why they must still be with us. I think we're all absolutely aware that we live in the land of grades in Pakistan. I know that particularly because as a head of an IB school here in Lahore, getting people to get away from those O and A level grades into a middle years and diploma program, although there are grades, but the whole approach to learning is very different. So our topic is very much in line with the idea of how do grades affect our children's learning. Indeed, how did grades affect your learning? And I think that really is the point, that while you're sitting there, you're going to be thinking, well, actually, am I delighted at the way grades treated me? Do I feel that I'm a richly educated person after the learning through strict grades that I've received? You know, Mark Twain made it very clear when he said, I've never let my schooling interfere with my education. And of course, you can separate schooling from education as such. Schooling is all about grades in some sense, and then when do we become educated? Hopefully we get some education as we're going along, but probably education comes in its fullest sense after we leave school, possibly even from university. So here today we've got some very renowned panelists, both from within Pakistan, from as far afield as Karachi, Lahore obviously, and indeed from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So I'll begin right over in the corner there with Miss Sheriad Asta Emmett, who, is the, now, how am I going to put this? She is the brainchild, see, this is better than owner, isn't it? Okay, she's the brainchild and principal behind the Lyceum School in Karachi. I must say I was amazed to hear from her that there are over 700 children in her school all doing A-level. It is what we in the UK call an A-level college. Here in Pakistan, I would imagine it's a fairly rare idea, but Ms. Sherazad studied social and political thought at the University of Sussex, and then sociology and equity studies in the education department of the University of Toronto. She taught at the University of Dallas for a number of years and at CAS for 2 years before opening her Lyceum School, which is a purely A-level school in Karachi. And of course, at the helm, Ms. Sherazad makes that school happen in terms of its popularity, its renown, and the success of its students. So, Ms. Sherazad, you're very welcome, and we look forward to your thoughts on the topic. Next to Ms. Sherazad is Mr. Hassan Khattak. Mr. Khattak, as of August this year, has taken on the post of Director of Examination Services at the British Council in Pakistan. And Mr. Khattak joins us here and indeed in Lahore from the head office at Springs Garden in London, although he has served the British Council for a number of years, both in Istanbul and in Bangkok, amongst others. Now, obviously, as the man in charge of exams, and we know that that would mean O and A level, IGCSE, he's a very important component to the argument today. Thank you and welcome, Mr. Khattak. Next to him is Mr. Jude Heaton. Mr. Heaton works for Teach for Malaysia as its program director. I've learned a lot from Jude, one of which facts is that he was on the ground at the time of the formation of TNS, which is the school where I've been in charge for the last 6.5 years. And it was very interesting to hear his views on why and how the school began. He previously led the strategy and delivery of access to higher education for Teach First, a charity which trains and supports people with leadership potential to become inspirational teachers, and that's of course something we all need, in schools in low-income communities across the UK. So a very broad perspective, and I think he's going to bring that same perspective to today's debate. Welcome, Jude. Nice to see you here. Jude, of course, has lived in Pakistan on and off. You may have known him as the editor or a contributor as well to the Daily Times of Friday. So he knows a bit about Pakistan and Lahore. And then I think a man who's probably no stranger to all of us, certainly Lahore's, if not Pakistan's premier university, LUMS, is Dr. Suhail Naqvi, who is the Vice-Chancellor of this renowned university. And it's my great pleasure to welcome him. He's previous to being the Vice-Chancellor, was indeed the Secretary for Higher Education Commission, where his interest, commitment to the development of university and education was well known indeed. All right, and it's our great pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Naqvi. Finally, next to me is Ms. Anjum S. Ahmed, the founder and CEO of Lahore Preschool and Learning Alliance in Lahore and Faisalabad, who's been associated with the field of education since 1975. After graduating with a degree in literature and psychology, she worked at the Kano state government in Nigeria as an education officer, and then on to the Ahmadu Bello University in Kano. Upon her return to Pakistan, she worked as an administrator in a number of private schools in Lahore and played an instrumental role in the academic and administrative expansion of these schools. Lahore Preschool came into existence as an independent venture in 1996, and by 1999, the increasing popularity of the preschool necessitates an extension to the one which is a household word name in Lahore, and that's the Learning Alliance. As the principal of Lahore Preschool and Learning Alliance, she plays a dynamic role in the development of the academic and governmental aspects of the institution. Obviously, it's renowned as an O and A-level centre, but latterly, Ms. Anjum and her staff and board have embraced the international baccalaureate, both at PYP primary and middle years program. She was just telling me earlier that she's already an authorized MYP school, and that the PYP and the diploma will be authorized within the end of this year or early next year. It has been a wonderful journey for her, and I think she's probably got some interesting views because she runs a dual school of O and A level and IB. Whilst they have a lot in common, they've got a few differences as well, so that could prove very interesting. Right. So how do we know you know what you can claim to know? Grades' primary function has to communicate a mastery of performance, and today they do anything but that. Success matters more than learning. How would you react to the statement that grades tend to reduce the quality of students' thinking? A grade-oriented environment is increased levels of cheating. Grades may not accurately reflect student performance, School psychologists worry because grades fix attention as their performance. Some schools are seen on a test rather than an adventure in ideas basis. We may come to see grading as a huge, noisy, fuel-guzzling, smoke-belching machine that constantly needs repair and new parts, when what we should be doing is pulling the plug on grades. Let's give an alternate view. We don't give grades, students earn them. Nowhere is the power that resides in the hands of faculty so apparent and so open to abuse. Good grading policies have features that promote fair and objective assessment of students' learning. The criteria that differentiate the grade levels should be clear and relevant to the goals we have set for a test or assignment. Grade grubbing students in a relentless pursuit of every possible point can often be the result. Shouldn't there be grade policy practices that promote learning? Yes, if the teacher takes the opportunity to give feedback to improve an assignment before final grade or extra credit possibilities, encouraging and student to dig deeper, become really engaged, regular attendance at school, being fully prepared for lessons. I don't know how many students you know like this. Actively participating in group activities, meeting deadlines and listening attentively. Grades must enhance fair and objective assessment of student learning and motivate that learning. Every new year, reassess your grading policies, its efficacy and expected improved outcomes. Finally, keep the grading system consistent with the purpose of grading. Collect data throughout the grading period. Include varied sources of data, project tests, quizzes, etc. I'm going to ask each of our speakers to give their point of view on grading. There's a bit of food for thought. I want to come out of this now and just direct our panelists to talk. They've got very little time, there are 5 of them, and let's hope that they'll give us some really lively thought and discussion. So I'd like to begin, and one of the points that was raised is we should be looking at this topic from the point of view of an age group level. Now, obviously, we can look at it from early years to primary, to middle school, to upper school, to university learning. I think some of our speakers will move in the direction that they feel happiest to talk about. So, Ms. Anjum, I'd like to begin with you, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you, Mr. Barnes, for that. My experience with children starts from the age 2 till the age of 6. That's the Lahore preschool. I think I am a little different from all of these people guests sitting here, and I experienced them through their growing years from age 6 to age 12. And in my opinion, those 6 sensitive periods of a child's development, that is the Lahore preschool or the preschool level, age 2 to 6, definitely does not fall into any kind of testing or grading system. We don't do it. I don't believe in it, because these are the years a child is learning all about himself or herself, learning to be independent, learning to see the minor details, learning to socialize. There is no question of how well can he write, how well can he retain, how well can he remember or reproduce. Therefore, at that age, I am dead against grades. Again, starting from age 6 to 12, my opinion is very much no grades. This is class 1 to class 5. Children move on from the initial sensitive period Maria Montessori defined very clearly on to the next plane of learning and development, which is learning in a society, learning in a group, learning about yourself, learning about discipline, about order in life, learning how to again react and behave in a society, learning how the actions and the consequences are going to be. However, unfortunately, our system does not permit, because the mindset in our country is, what are the grades? Even for a child, our school actually prepares children for HSN College, which you're all very familiar with, and the Convent of Jesus and Mary. And the test for a 6-year-old getting into HSN College for class 2 is based on grades. And I, as much as I feel that I am a criminal, I still have to do it. I feel quite restricted there, and so the question arises, how and when are we going to be able to change our mindsets? However, for those who are continuing with Learning Alliance, there are two options. Either they choose now the International Baccalaureate, or they choose the Cambridge International. We are moving away from grades in that area too. Progressively, we are thinking of mentioning percentages rather than grades till class 5. Let's look at how the child did according to percentages. It's the mindset, it's the psychology behind all A's, all A's. That's not it. Was he good? They have to participate in all other extracurricular activities to find out more about themselves and how and who they are in this society. So therefore, something like rubrics of the International Baccalaureate should come into existence to make a pyramid of assessment by the time they are in class 5. And Learning Alliance, fortunately, my team is moving towards that. Perhaps as of this year or next year, we are going to stop giving grades, that is the A, B, C, D, in academics only. And the rest, okay, you can do it, you can't do it, and yes, you can be good at this, you can be good at that, but at the end of the day, you fail or pass if you don't have the grades, if you don't have that kind of percentage. We would like to. And to conclude, I'm not going to take too much time because we have very little time. I thought this topic was a very, very broad topic. Beyond age 12, 11, 12, the moment you step into the O levels, the 6, 7, 8, going into the Cambridge International, even the MYP and the diploma program, getting 38 points in the DP to be able to get into a university, yes, grades do become, well, ironically, very important. At the moment, yes, they do. However, in the early years till age 12, I am strictly of the opinion that children should not be graded till they're age 12. Thank you.
Right, some real food for thought there. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Anjum. Now we'll move on to Dr. Naqvi. I'm not sure which angle he's going to come at us from, because of course A-level and indeed latterly DP grades will mean a great deal to him, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that, I hope.
Well, when you're looking at 10,000 people wanting to come in and you have only a few seats to offer, so you've got to make some hard decisions. Exactly how are you going to make that hard decision? And I think that the first realization is no matter what decision, no matter what path you choose, is going to be a flawed one. You're dealing with the most complex entity in the entire universe, and that is the human. And you're trying to convert that human into a single number. There is no system in the world that can do that for you. So what you try and do at that point in time is then to, well, okay, if one point will not do it, then you try and gather more data points. So you say, okay, I look at their grades at the O-level stage and I look at the A-level stage. Then you try and add more data points and more data points. But ultimately, whatever you do, I will repeat, you're talking about the most complex entity that there is a human being, and you're trying to convert them into a number. But you don't have a choice, because at the end of the day, you still have to make a decision who gets in, who doesn't get in. So the point is that grades, at least at the university level, are here. But it's very interesting as to what the universities have done with grades. If you look at the bachelor level, very strongly, grades are playing a role. You have every class you take, you'll be given a grade, and then you add up and you get a GPA, etc. You move on to the master's level, and the number of levels decrease. Then you're only talking about distinction, pass or fail. And you move on to the PhD level, and now you're only talking about pass or fail. So it's like you've gone in a full circle. She started with the preschoolers not having any grades, and you end up with the PhDs not having any grades. So maybe the PhD then learns what the preschooler already knows. The focus, though, has to be what has the person learned. And I think this has to do with how you conduct the institution, what kind of atmosphere you place over there. Education is, after all, just about lighting a fire. And to me, a grade is how intensely, how brightly does that fire burn. If you have a number that can figure that out, well, more power to you. But let's not forget the first and foremost part of that, which is, did you light that fire? Because that fire is what is going to get them through their life and get them to where they want you to go. That's about all I'll say.
Right, I think we expected to hear what we heard. It was great. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Naqvi. Moving on to Jude. I know you might come at us from a different angle, and we're looking forward to hearing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Clive. So this is a hugely complicated topic, but my opinion on it, I suppose, can be boiled down to something really quite simple. Our obsession with grades is one of the most dangerous and destructive forces in our education system that most distracts us from what learning should be about. And not just what it should be about, but what it needs to be about if we're to prepare the next generation to succeed and thrive in the world that we're living in now. And to justify that, I'll give you one short story and one bit of evidence. So the story is from 20 years ago. I remember it very well. I was doing my A-levels. I had just started my A-levels. I was studying King Lear. I was asked to do an essay about the theme of power in King Lear. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I felt like my mind was really coming alive. I was seeing connections between the text and political ideas I had, social ideas, what it meant about justice. And I loved this essay. It was maybe the bit of schoolwork I'd most enjoyed in my life up until then. And so I wrote this essay talking about ideas of power, about ideas from psychoanalysis, and all of these different things. And I handed in my essay incredibly proud, feeling, to Dr. Naqvi's point, that flame had been lit, and I was coming alive. I got my grade back. The grade was a B-, and it said, "This is one of the most interesting essays I've read on this topic. It's full of fascinating ideas and really genuinely thought-provoking. But you haven't hit the criteria that's in our curriculum. Therefore, I can't give you an A grade. Next time, please try to answer within the mark scheme instead." Now, I would argue that is not an unusual situation. That actually happens all the time. And what does that mean? And that made me think, and that's what sparked for me a lifetime journey of thinking that we need to really radically reimagine what schools are. Because what is that saying? That teacher is effectively telling me, stop thinking and follow the rules. And that, I think, is deeply, deeply destructive. So there's my story. In terms of my quick bit of evidence, I teach from Malaysia, where I work at the moment. We conducted a bit of research where we looked at which of our teachers were getting the best grades. We also then looked and did some research into which classrooms had the most lively, creative classrooms. In other words, the classrooms where learning seemed like it was happening most. And what we found is there was an inverse correlation between those things. So the teachers who were saying, shut up, sit down, write this down, and jump through the hoops were getting good grades. The teachers who were saying, work in groups, ask questions, really try and think about this, they were struggling to get good grades. And so what we see is that grades fail both people who need to be stretched and pushed, and they fail people who are wanting to really just get up to baseline levels of engagement with the subject. So I would argue that grades dehumanize us, they reduce us to a number, they reduce education to something that it shouldn't be, they standardize things when we should be personalizing things, and they introduce conformity when we should be encouraging diversity. Thank you.
Well, I think if anything's exploded the myth that grades are necessary, we've just heard that one. Thank you very much, Jude. Let's move on then to a man who administers these examinations. He doesn't look like a martinet, but Mr. Khattak is going to tell us how he comes to be an examinations director.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think if I was to speak on behalf of the organization that I work for, the simple answer would be clearly in mind the service delivery we do. The answer would be yes, grades matter. But I've got a very different personal aspect to this, and I think a lot of it comes from my own personal life and the times that I've been through. But before I come on to that, I think what we need to understand that grades, yes, it is how you perform on that day, but is that a true reflection of what you are and what you have been in the entire period that you have been studying for whatever examination you've been sitting? It's a hit and miss. For me, it's been a hit a number of times, and it's been a miss a number of times as well. And I think as a parent, I understand more now that what I put through my two sons these days just to get grades and higher grades, I am not doing them any favors in terms of becoming good humans towards society generally. And if I put this, I've only been in Pakistan 3 months. I've been away for 20 years. I grew up here through Beacon House in Islamabad, and I've been working abroad in several countries since. But the Pakistan that I've come back to now after a very long period, what I see here is increasing levels of competition. But I think we need to break this down. So you have academics and grades at preparatory level, then you have academic and grades at school level, you have academic and grades at university level, and then you go on to professional qualifications. But what is the other choice? What is the Pakistani system, but equally the global system, allowing us to do instead? What is there to do? You have a look at universities, schools, colleges across the globe. You have a look at employers across the globe. What is the only thing they look at these days? It's just grades. They don't look at a person in the true form of this person is also a human being, and he or she has other things apart from grades as well. So we are stuck in a system whereby this is the only option available to us, albeit very unfortunate that this is the only option available to us, that we put so much stress upon grades. We don't have another choice. But this needs to be a very collective and a global move towards moving to a situation where the entire focus is not just on grades, but it is on other things as well. I would hate for my sons to have A's and grow up to be complete antisocial people. I think that would be my failure as a parent. It would not be my success. And lastly, I think we had a point here of a truly well-rounded education. I think this is important. Education is not just having good grades in your academic life. It is what you come out to be as a human being at the end of the day when it really matters. Can I put down all of my knowledge that I have gained by getting A's and A stars into my practical life? I think the honest answer would be no. I haven't used any of it. I've learned more through experience. And I've been a single parent for 10 years of my life. I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I think what those years in my hard life have taught me on the ground and the realities around have been more valuable to me in my success in the position that I am in today than what my grades have been. I have never got an A in my life, neither in O levels or A levels. So I think it's a responsibility upon us that in Pakistan, along with the major academic institutions here and schools, we move towards something that we don't force our children to be just complete bookworms and academics. They need to groom into nice human beings who can actually put down their energies towards the development of this country. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Hassan. I think that what the lovely touch about that was it came from the heart, and of course the fact that his own children are a centre of this grade controversy is really made it very warm and helpful. Thank you so much indeed, Hassan. Could I please ask the speakers, apparently there is some thought that we're not getting our voices quite to the back. These gooseneck mics can play havoc with that, and we need to actually speak into the mic so that everybody in the hall can hear. On that note, then, can I ask our final speaker, Ms. Sherazad, the founder and principal of the Lyceum School, an entirely A-level school in Karachi, to give us her thoughts on a subject which, of course, for her is really absolutely essential, grades in an A-level school.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Assalamu alaikum. There's very little left to say after hearing so much from all of you. But, I just want to ask you, how many of you in the audience have achieved A's throughout? How many people in the world who really contributed to society have been A graders throughout? The question really is, what is education for? In a society, in a world where democracy and equity are keywords, buzzwords, are we working towards that? Are we really, the education system, feeding into that ideology? Are we continuing to create a tiered society? What do grades mean? What does learning mean? Do grades translate to a good job, a good neighborhood, a good social and economic position? And what does that get you at the end of the day? Students these days come to school, they go to tuition centers. So it's a consolidation of what they have studied to get good grades in the latter half of the day. Where is the family? The family that they wish to provide for, enjoy later on when they're in a position in those good jobs. Where are the children? Where is the socialization? Where are the relationships? Where's the emotional aspect? Where's the free time? Where's the thinking? Where's the learning on one's own? So it's all sort of very cut and dry. I mean, what are the A graders going to do? They continue to be cogs in the same wheel, the same machine. I'm not saying that, yes, I represent the Lyceum, which is known to produce very good results. I'm not saying that we can do away with that. We cannot. It teaches you good discipline. It teaches you working hard consistently, 3 hours, 2 hours, depending on which grade you're at home is essential. It's like a lot of things are essential that you have to do consistently. But what is the motivation behind all this learning? That is very important. I'll give you a very personal example of what motivated me to want to do well in something, and it was not in grades. I was maybe 9. I'm a polio survivor. I did exceptionally well in school always, and I was in an international school. And I never realized that I excelled in school. It didn't matter to me. But what I wanted to excel in was, we used to play baseball. And I would always be, it was a natural selection, and I always knew that I'd probably be the last one to be chosen. And for me, it was very important not to be the last. That was my motivation. And I really wasn't the last. I was always the second last, and I can't forget this peer, this student who who was rather heavy and couldn't run very fast, and I ran faster than him, so he was chosen last. So for me, coming second last in that choice was what I really feel was my success, not always excelling. You know, so I really wonder what learning means, what motivates us to do things. It's a question I put to you. I really do put to you. How important has that grade been for you, other than when you get a job or you go into university? How has it helped you in your social life? If I can say I went to McGill or Harvard or whatever, if I can't say that, who am I? What does it do to the majority of the students who don't get those grades? Are they not human beings? And that's the majority. So our own academic, our own system is so flawed, as we all realize it, but it's almost like we're still sort of coming out of the Industrial Revolution, right? We're still sort of in a sense that this is what we have to do. We can't think beyond. We're thinking out of the box. We can't question. We can't, are we given initiative? Are we allowed to take initiative? Is that important? What is important? He talks about social justice. He talks about equity, we talk about community, we talk about service, we talk about society, we talk about family. Is all that sort of taught in how we model teaching, how we sort of interact with students? We don't. It's so very important to really, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to Beacon House for opening this up. These are very important questions. It's almost been colonized, in a sense, of not being able to think beyond what is absolutely essential for our society. Why do we have violence in our society? Why is there so much anger? Why is there so much fear? Why is there so much frustration? Why is there, all these emotions. It was my emotion. It is your emotion which leads you to want to learn more. It's memories, it's experiences. When you were hurt, when you were happy, whatever you were feeling, that is the motivation that makes you want to learn. And what happens in the classroom? Are we motivated truly to learn, or is it because our parents are happier for our A's and sadder for our D's? Is it ours, or is it theirs? Is it our life? Is it theirs? So I conclude at that note. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Right, I think that really came from the heart and leads us into the questions. And I've got an absolute bunch of them here. A lot of you seem very worried about the whole concept of grades. So I'll point them at various panelists. I'll try to give them the questions which seem to relate to their discussion points. There's a very good one here on what do we do in Pakistan if we don't have grades? How will it affect us as individuals? That was, just have a, I seem to have, that one seems to have disappeared now, but I will find it later. This is quite a nice one. To you, Mr. Katak. How can our current grading system encourage diversity?
Very interesting. I think you need to break down what diversity is. So it can be ethnic, it can be religious, it can be sexual orientation, it can be class of society, etc. So you will probably get variable answers according to how you diversify that answers. But equally, I think it additionally depends on which sort of subjects you take, which will lead to more diversity than others. My feeling is sciences will probably not lead to diversity, but I would think the arts and the social subjects would lead to diversity. So I think if I was to take an example of the countries that I've worked in abroad, people who've come from sort of arts backgrounds and humanities subjects backgrounds would be more open to diversity as a topic than perhaps the ones who've come from a very science-oriented background where things are very black and white. There is no grey element in there. And I think that's the distinction at least I have felt in the years that I've been in this industry.
Thank you very much. Jude, how can we survive in Pakistan society without grades and marks? Indeed, all of our colleges and universities insist on marks and grades, and in fact, right down to class 1 at school.
So I think we've got to go back to the question of what is education for? And if we break it down into two parts, we could say there's a humanitarian part, building the sort of qualities, values, and citizenship that we want in people. And the second part, which is the economic part. One of the roles of education is a kind of economic sifter. You know, you get your good grades in order to get into the good college, in order to get into the good university, in order to get into the good job. So behind this question is effectively, how do we effectively sort people in society into the most effective roles that match their ability and aspirations if we don't have the indicator of grades to do that? Now, I would argue that grades at the moment don't do that very effectively at all. If you look at how, for example, Google at the moment is recruiting, they've just taken the decision to say, you know what, we don't even want to look at the degree you've got and the university that you went to. What we care about as an employer is, do you have the skills and the qualities that you need to succeed in this job? And what we're seeing increasingly across the world is that actually employers are seeing we have so many people with undergraduate. It used to be the case, you get your good undergraduate degree from a good university, that's your passport to middle class, upper class life and prosperity. That is simply no longer true. At least it's no longer guaranteed. And that means that employers and indeed universities are increasingly looking at what other ways they can use and what other metrics they can use to assess quality. So what I think we need to do is we need to be moving towards a system where we use more portfolio-based learning, we use more exhibitions. So with project-based learning, you can often then have a display or an exhibition that helps your group work, it helps your presentation work, that gives you examples that you can use in job interviews and indeed in applications to universities. And if we have a system that enables that sort of evidence to be used, what we'll find is that the need for grades begins to fade away. And what I'm worried is that when you look at the global picture, across the States, across Europe, this is already happening. You know, this is the reality of what's happening now in those countries, and we're living in a globally competitive economy. If in a country like Pakistan or Malaysia, where I work now, if we hold on to this idea that grades are the metric of success, that's not setting up our children for success. That's setting up our children for success in the 1950s. That's not the world they're stepping into. So to me, we need to move beyond this for all of our interests, and we need to start doing it now.
Thank you very much, Jude. Yeah, food for thought again. Ms. Anjum. Thank you. Though we realize the importance of a well-grounded and holistic education, the importance of developing characters, but we as teachers are forced to focus on grades through comparison of GPAs. How can we as teachers ever break away from this trend?
All right, thank you. And I would wholeheartedly like to thank Beacon House for at least setting the stage, taking this first step. To all of us, for all of us as teachers, I've been working on this. I've been working on this for a very long time. When I started the A-levels and we started doing the A-levels, I introduced the Aga Khan University SSC and the HSSC. Simply because I was trying to make parents understand there's no point in looking for grades all the time in O-levels and A-levels. I ran that program for 5 years, and I'm sorry I failed. Because the parent body is not going to change overnight. This is not going to change overnight. What we need, parents and teachers, all of us to understand, a child is an individual. I come across this every now and then in my school. He's a musician, for heaven's sake. Why are you looking at A grades? Why are you trying to drum him? And the rote learning that is coming along, even in the A-levels, Cambridge International, and sending this kid to tuition centers. Most of these children are going to tuition centers. And I actually totally detest it. If this child is not learning academically, there's something else in him. I'm constantly talking to my teachers. I'm constantly telling my staff, my vice principals, senior vice principals, that we have to look at that one thing that this child may be good at. And that is why I am assuring you that as a step I have been for the past been working with Aga Khan University. We had to close it because we failed. We couldn't make the parents understand. I have launched the International Baccalaureate, and my sons who have studied through the O-levels and the A-levels programs don't want their children in the Cambridge International. They want their children to learn differently. They are now in International Baccalaureate, learning differently. What would they like to be? And to be very honest, at the end of the day, like Mr. Khatak, I was the president of the Students' Union at Lahore College in 1974-75. The principal would continuously have me sit in her office and tell me that you're a gold medalist. Work hard, work hard. I said, I'm not going to get a gold medal. She said, why? I said, I don't want a gold medal. She said, why not? I said, because I want to do debates. I want to do the drama. I want to be part of the sportsmanship around. I want to do everything. And honest to goodness, today, without any hesitation, I am who I am because I didn't get that gold medal, in all honesty. So it is our responsibility as educationists, since I feel that the board across here, actually all of us agree, grades are not the end all. But then who is going to change the mindset? Who is going to tell a parent that by giving so-and-so so much fee to a private institution, it does not guarantee your son's admission into HSN College necessarily, or your daughter's A's, all A's in the O-levels and the A-levels. But what does an educational institution does is making a good human being also out of it. This is our responsibility, and I feel strongly that we need to fulfill it, and we as educationists and parents and grandparents need to try and change the tide now.
Well, okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Anjum. Dr. Naqvi, grades affect learning even of employers or employees, not just students. What's your view on the fact that employees' appraisals also are a form of grading? And indeed, whether they succeed or fail, should these grades in fact be the basis on their success or otherwise in a school system, in the workplace? Dr. Naqvi.
Okay, it's appearing as if grading and a focus on learning are two separate things. But the reality is that the world's considered to be the world's #1 schooling system is actually a one that does not focus on grades, which is the Finnish system. And it is entirely, I mean, it's a happy-go-lucky children going off into the forest. They're learning by doing, they're learning by observation, they are supported and they're enthusiastic. And then this is the strange thing. When you hold standardized tests, they are the #1 in the world. So it's not, it doesn't appear like the two are opposite to each other. But this is not such a straightforward issue either, because to compound that, the #2 system is probably the Singaporean system, which is a completely different one. So So neither is there a dichotomy between learning and grading, but neither is there such a clear path that what will be success. My own bias would be that based on the world, in the world that we are in at the moment, and what the world now truly cherishes, which is creativity, that your number one focus has to be on learning, because that is where the human truly distinguishes and is able to do things that actually no machine can do, and they are become the creators of the machine. The other point I wanted to make was with respect to the difference between grading and an assessment system. You are holding the grades to blame, where the blame may lie in the assessment system. You're, as an employer, the question is, what are you grading? Are you grading teamwork? Are you grading ethics? Are you grading delivery, leadership? What is it? Or are you just grading, how many minutes a person is late? So if you build the right kind of an assessment system, and a portfolio is just a different type of assessment system. At the end of the day, a portfolio means that you have lots of different types of information. So you have information about how the person did in sports, whether they created a web page, whether they wrote a blog, whether they were artists, whether they were musicians, and also what grades you got. And then you allow the experienced person to add that all up to create a number, to make a decision. At the end of the day, a decision has to be made. So it is the sophistication of the assessment system that we are talking about, not really the grades, which are just numbers which you will get either way.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you very much, Dr. Naqvi. Ms. Sherazad, you come across as a very human person. How would you answer this one? How do we deal in this day and age with students and teachers who feel dehumanized by always and only being judged by the grades they achieve and generate as teachers? What kind of learning really takes place in an environment where we, who lead schools, look at our teachers as grade makers?
So is the question about how we look at teachers or about how students feel dehumanized?
No, it's the teachers who are feeling dehumanized by always and only being judged as teachers by the grades they achieve.
Oh, okay, that's what you're asking. That is very sad. That is very sad. It shouldn't happen. It does happen. And I think it's the students who make those decisions. And although I do feel that there are some teachers where they're giving that little extra in class, the experience, the process of learning, where it's much more meaningful, at the end of the day, it's not the result but the experience of learning. If a school is judging teachers by the grades that he or she gets, I think it's the school's responsibility to ensure that they've got the right person teaching at the right level, because it's like a student who's not doing well in science. I'm sure he has strengths elsewhere, or as you asked the question about an employee, if he or she is not doing well in some place, then maybe this is another area where he can or she can do better. So schools, administration, decision makers really need to be much more human, much more able to sort of look at the different strengths when they're looking at weaknesses, then the strengths also. And that doesn't happen a lot of times. I think we really are just tick marking. And it is unfortunate, yes. It's a very good question, thank you.
So whoever posed that question, it's a very relevant one. But look, there's a great pile of your questions. Thank you very much for taking such an interest in this particular session. I like to believe we've got 5 truly inspirational educationists sitting here with their own views, and I'm quite sure that they'd be willing hereafter to chat to any of you who would want to ask them very specific questions, because it covers a broad spectrum of the educational process, both in the world and indeed here in Pakistan. So thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I just
Yes.
ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm just perturbed about this thing, that why did we not have somebody from the government of Pakistan or Punjab being represented here? Because the students that I prepare who do their A-levels, and they're trying to get into the medical colleges, and once they get good grades, I suggest go and cram FSC. Why should we? Because there's no way you're getting into a medical college if you do not cram FSC. So it's not just about the parent body, it's about the universities and colleges in Pakistan, especially the government professional colleges. And once they go there, one of my students, and if I may please be allowed, just to quote this, one of my students, a couple of them wanted to go into the medical college, apply for the MCAT examination. And I said, okay, I'll try. They said, to get the FSC crammed here in for the school for you. So the senior vice principal of my school said, no. They go to that academy, that academy, that academy. I said, why? She said, because that's the reality check. They have to go through those things. After the first 2 days, these 3 students came to me and they said, you know what, the teacher asks a question and the class gets up in a chorus and replies. Is this what we are getting into the medical college for? And that was heartbreaking. We need to change our professional colleges. It's not just about us. I mean, we realize it. All of us sitting here probably realize it. LUMS has just recently done away with their LCAT. So they are now looking at the SATs for their admissions, which is, I think, a terrific idea, because though it was a BBC, but even then it was a grade, which at times the child just didn't do it. So they've recently, and I really appreciate that a lot, Mr. Naqvi, because that's giving an opportunity to a lot of other students to be able to do that. But then what about the engineering universities, the government colleges, the professional colleges, and particularly the medical colleges? You have to have those grades. And that is what parents are looking at. That is exactly what parents are asking for. That leaves us stranded. Totally, stranded and hand-tied. We need to change the complete mindset.
Dr. Naqvi, would you like to quickly sum up?
Wow, okay. But I think it's a fantastic topic. I don't think, as I had described earlier, that's an either-or situation. I think that all the panelists, they agreed upon the core that is learning. That is, there is no compromise absolutely on that. And if you have learned how to learn, if you have that passion in you, if that fire has been lit, if you have understood the multidimensional nature of learning, and if you have stepped outside the particular box of the subject that you are in, and you're talking about being a human and being an ethical person, being compassionate, being all of those qualities that we want in a good human being, then at least I'm convinced you will be successful in any kind of a grading scheme, and in almost. You will be successful in life. So I think that core is where we all agree upon. We probably will disagree upon the grading schemes, etc. But as an engineer and as a practical person who has to then make a decision who to admit, there will have to be a system that will sift things. There's no way around that. But we need to keep learning and improving of what that system is. And there are many beautiful models in the world for us to learn from.
Right. Jude, one sentence.
The education system responds to incentives. The incentives at the moment are driven by employers and by parents who think that grades are the things that Parents are driven by care for their children. They think that by getting good grades, they're giving their children a passport to success in the world of tomorrow. That is simply not true, and we're at a moment of huge opportunity where the economic interests and the humanitarian interests of education are actually aligned, because what we need is creative people who can work well in groups, and we need to move towards a system that incentivizes that rather than the system we have at the moment.
Thanks, Jude. Hassan, one sentence.
I think I'm speaking as a parent here. I think it's very important, and this is what I've realized, and I keep telling my wife as well. We need to nurture our children to get the best out of them, and that is not necessarily through getting higher and higher grades. It is a number of other things. We don't know how long we will live, we don't know how long they will live. And for that, I think we need to maximize the time we have with them to make them good overall human beings and not just high grade achievers.
Thank you.
One sentence.
And finally, Ms. Sherazad.
I think we need a curriculum for life.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely. What a good topic. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Thank you.